Great. Well, thanks everybody. I too was struggling a bit to get in, too many browsers, so needed to make sure I had the right one to run this. So appreciate you hanging out here for a moment. Shall I go ahead and share my screen, Max? What's the best way to do this?
The slides are available up on the screen now. If you want to, you can just click through them.
Okay, that works just fine. Let me toggle back here because I'm anticipating just going ahead and sharing. So bear with me one moment. I might end up having you, well, let's see how to do this. Sorry, now I've got it in screen mode. This is not. Okay, there we go. All right. So welcome everybody. I lead product marketing for Epicor, and Epicor is a company that serves small to mid-size, mostly manufacturers, distributors, and retailers. We're a US-based company, but international in scope, and if you haven't heard from us, check us out. I've been at Epicor, gosh, I just celebrated a year. And I am the VP of product marketing for the organization. So just a little bit of background, I lead a team of about 28 product marketers who focus on all aspects of product marketing. They've got vertical expertise, they have services and support marketing. I even have the competitive and market intelligence team. So I recognize that all product marketing groups are set up somewhat differently. And so I thought it would be important for you to get a little context as to what my team looks like. A little background about me. I've been in software marketing for, goodness, over 25 years, spent the majority of my career at SAP, and then went over to GE Digital to help them with their software transformation and led product and demand marketing there. So great to be here. What I want to talk to you about today is this notion of how do product marketing organizations really work to pivot in a crowd of ever-changing voices. And let me start a little bit with an analogy. I think that many of you have probably played the whisper game, where you essentially, you all sit in chairs, and the person at the beginning makes a statement, whispers it into the ear of the next person, who whispers in the ear of the next person. And when you play this game, what you quickly figure out is the person at the end of that chain has said something absolutely entirely different from what the person at the beginning wanted them to say. And everybody looks at each other, often extremely puzzled, like, how in the world could that have happened? I only gave a sentence, right? And I think that the interesting thing about this is the life that we as product marketers often lead. We start with a very strong message. We feel like that message is clearly articulated. We do our best to write great things about it, to provide copy blocks. And by the end, which is the channel, right, who is actually the customer or the partner or whoever that is that we want that message to go to, it's entirely different. And we scratch our heads a bit like, how in the world did this happen? And so what I want to talk to you a little bit today about is, I think, how it happens and some ways that we can avoid it happening as product marketers. So let me jump to my next slide. So just to give you an idea, I think many of you know this if you're product marketers yourself, obviously, if not working closely with the product marketing organization. We get questions coming from so many different areas, right? And our job is to digest them, to really understand them, and then to provide the knowledge to help the organization be the voice, be the consistent voice to the customer, okay? And this starts, of course, with, at the very beginning, really understanding the market opportunity. I mentioned that I have a CMI organization, Competitive and Market Intelligence, and they really spend the bulk of their day really understanding what is that market opportunity, right? We don't want to go to the wrong folks. We don't want to go to a market that doesn't exist. So what is that market opportunity for our company? The second thing is, of course, defining that product direction. How does our product, how does our unique differentiator help with that market opportunity for the customer, right? Pipeline development, working closely with the various groups such as the demand organization to make sure that we are aligning to the goals of the organization and that message is resonating. And then lastly, of course, revenue generation. How is sales driving the right messages? How are we ensuring that our company delivers to the right places? So product marketing in the key areas are absolutely vast. And these are just some of the questions, right, that thus we are asked. How differentiated is my message? How big is the market opportunity? What is my external perception of the company? Are these revenue targets even reasonable, right? Because oftentimes, I don't know about your life, but sales comes with one revenue target, finance comes with another, and product marketing sits in the middle, says, hold on, time out, everyone. Let's really understand what's going on out there so that we can meet you in the middle and really drive that through. I've been going through that recently with our annual operating plan process. And it's, trust me, it is truly a negotiation in the finest of ways. So product marketing is very much the cusp of being strategic to the organizational objectives, because we help answer all these absolutely key questions and we help drive the boat in the right direction. Let's keep going. So as I said, more important than ever is the voice of the market. And our job is to serve as the orchestrator, right? We orchestrate between the sales organization, the demand organization, to make sure that that strategy, that what the customer truly wants, is echoed throughout every aspect of the process. And this is not easy, as I said, because the voices come from multiple places. So let's talk about how we get that message to market today. I like to think of it, and maybe it's because I was hungry when I was doing these slides, but I like to think of it a little bit like a factory, right? And the various things that are required to make, deliver, and sell the product. So in this case, I picked something simple, cupcakes, right? Product marketing sits at the forefront of that. They're really very much around determining what to sell, how to talk about it, where to sell it, and to whom. So as the factory, right, as the factory of getting the product out. And this requires, as we all know, you got to be really tightly aligned with product management. In all honesty, when I started at Epicor, I was working for the product management organization. It just moved over to product marketing to marketing. It doesn't really matter ultimately where I sit, because I need to make sure that I'm tightly aligned with that product management group, or I won't be successful as a product marketer. I also need to make sure that I'm very tightly aligned with the marketing group, because they're my voice to market, right? They're the ones moving over to the next phase that are going to help me actually package the message and product so it's ready to be delivered. They're the wrapper, right? They're the wrapper of the cupcake. They put the sprinkles on, they make sure it gets to the right places. They create the campaign as the orchestrator of that message. And then lastly, we've got, of course, the demand gen and field marketing teams, getting it into the hands of the right customers at the right time, through the prospects, through the sales, through the partners, et cetera. And this is really key, because as product marketers, I don't necessarily, and I just had this discussion with a colleague of mine, I rely on them to tell me what the mix is, what the channels are that are most appropriate. What I want them to do is make sure that they're measuring that so that I can then change and go back to the factory and help the factory deliver better product. And I can change the messaging to make sure that it's in line with what the customers truly want. So this is an absolute feedback loop that is so vital. And I think that what happens oftentimes in organizations is that alignment is missing. Or that alignment is not clear. And I can tell you, in my own organization, we work daily on making sure it is clear, because without that clarity, the voice will be lost. If everybody thinks they can reinvent what the message is going to be at each stage, imagine what a mess it is for that customer. It's like, you know, putting your customer in a room of people all speaking a different language and expecting them to figure out what you're saying. That's not their job. It's your job to make sure that that message is getting to market in a cohesive way, and that you as product marketers are helping with that alignment every step of the way. So for example, if the way in which they are, quote, wrapping the product story, your product in the factory, is wrong and is not going to deliver that message, you need to check in with them, okay? Going back to the whispers, you might want to talk to the person third down the row and say to them, hey, just out of curiosity, what did you hear? What are you saying? Because if it doesn't match, we got to back up the truck and we got to start over. And so getting this message to market and checking in with these various channels and organizations to achieve that alignment at each stage is absolutely pivotal. If not, what you'll find is at the end, you'll have a message that's totally disconnected from what you intended. and your factory is thus very, very broken. So very key that you look at all these things, and as product marketers that you aid in orchestrating this. So the ways in which you have to do this, which is no easy task, is a couple different ways. The first one is you need to make sure that you have not just data, but insightful data. I talked about the importance of really understanding what are those customers listening to? What are they reading, etc. So once you've gone through that stage and the delivery to market is achieved, you need that data as product marketers to consistently improve, okay? And what's interesting is I think that oftentimes we look at data equals pipeline. Data does not equal pipeline, right? For product marketing, data is much, much more than pipeline. Pipeline is one measure, but the other measure is how long are they spending on web pages? What content are they downloading? All of these things, and it has to be that holistic story, and you have to deliver and you have to obtain that insightful data to succeed. And so this is absolutely key, and it's very, very much one of the things that product marketers need to make sure they have to be able to achieve and do this every step of the way. If, for example, as I keep coming back to, the voice is broken, you need to understand where did that breakdown occur? How can it be fixed in the future, right? Did you design a campaign where you didn't actually have a 360 view of the customer, and thus you don't have that intelligence about the customer to be able to address them? Or are you perhaps giving them a piece of content and not following up with the next most relevant message that aligns to that? So this data is absolutely key, and all those linkage points are important. Otherwise, it's somewhat like handing a baton to somebody in the dark and hoping you understand where they're going. You will never understand where they're going without having that data to help you improve. The second thing that you really need to do, and I talked about this earlier when I was showing my cupcake analogy, is you have to have organizational alignment. Every step of your organization needs to be aligned around the messages. So for example, when in my company, we have messages like many do according to vertical. We have it according to key initiative, things like financial visibility, operational excellence, and then we even have them according to subvertical, right? So we specialize in some key subverticals and go very deep, things like HVAC, fabricated metals, right? And that message is so important, and that organizational alignment is so important because it starts with our annual operating process. We have to start with what are those key subverticals, those key verticals, and those key messages that we want to deliver. What is the revenue aligned around them? And that then trickles all the way through the stage of the products that we will deliver to address them, whether ensuring that our products are there, as well as whether our products need to be strengthened to address them better in the future, and all the way down to the campaigns and the channels. And that organizational alignment is something that product marketing plays a role in every step of the way, but we don't own it. And we have to accept that we don't own it, but that in order for us to succeed, we need to make sure we're playing a vital part in it. The third thing that's absolutely important is this notion of continuous learning, right? If we don't understand the data, if we're not given the data, we don't have the opportunity to continue to improve. And so what's important is to create a culture of, gee, did that actual campaign that we all spent all that time on that we thought was the right thing, or did that piece of content that we loved so much that we thought was so great, did it perform the way we thought it would? Did the message get to market the way we thought it would? Did it deliver the revenue we thought it would? And if not, stop, back up, go back to your first voice, and start the process over if need be. There's nothing wrong with doing that. That is better than continuing to whisper the wrong message in the ears and hoping for a different result, right? It's much more important that we, fail fast and have the mentality of a continuous learning process. And it comes from the data, right? And that's why these three things, data, alignment, and continuous learning, you don't get to choose one or the other. They're all absolutely pivotal to success. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some real world examples. Everybody always says, okay, that's all great, right? Yeah, easy to say, harder to do. It is hard to do. So I thought that what I would do is put a couple examples together. These are similar, but not exactly, of things that I've dealt with, and talk a little bit about how this plays out. So in this case, the question came from a sales organization that said very much, should we change our roadmap to include, because once again, I service retail, to include the feature of self-checkout in the next release, okay? And what I want to show here is the role that product marketing played, and then how we successfully influenced the decision and how we worked with so many other groups to make that happen, right? So sales said, in this example, self-checkout, change your roadmap. You got to do this. and product management came back to us and said, wait a minute, stop. We have 800 things on our roadmap, minimally. We have a very solid roadmap. We've communicated to the customers, and candidly, product marketing and sales, we don't believe you. So prove it, right? So product marketing's role, once again, was to be the orchestrator. We did extensive research. We went to the market intelligence group, which is part of our organization. And we said, well, what is the market saying? Do they really want this feature? Is this the most important to them? Now, once again, you always have to remember, we looked at it in the vein of obviously who our target customers are. And they came back and they said, not now. Mobile point of sale is much more important given the whole COVID situation. People need to be out there. They need to be selling mobily. Self-checkout's great, but who's going to the store, right? If people don't want to be in the stores, they want to be out and about obtaining their products. Then, ironically, went back to sales and they said, all right, that's great, but we still would like a little more background, right? Sometimes sales is, they are listening to the customer, and maybe they're not listening to all the customers. Maybe they don't have that market insight like a product marketing or a market intelligence team has. And so they can be pretty adamant about their feedback. And they said, can you give us a little more? So we went and we said, all right, that's fine. We'll go to our customers, right? And we did a customer survey. And our customer survey, ironically, said, yeah, self-checkout's good, but it's not number one, right? We really want more mobile and e-commerce and delivery. And self-checkout came out a bit further down for our customer base. And so we took that information, listening to the broader audience, once again, serving to align the organization, serving to be the voice of market, and we came back with a decision. And the decision was no product change at this point, perhaps in future, right? Given the market circumstances are likely to change, of course, we hope. And the functionality of self-checkout's already planned. And we don't want to work with product management and push product management to put things aside, i.e. mobility, that are on the roadmap today that are ahead of self-checkout. We want to continue, and we will, however, in the future do self-checkout, and this is the plan. Okay, so this is a good example about how product marketing really can listen and deliver to get that voice of market in and drive that data alignment and intelligence. So once again, I want to really highlight why this worked. It worked because you didn't just listen to one voice. You didn't just assume that voice next to you that you just heard the latest news from is the only voice that you should listen to. Okay, might be the voice of reason because they just talked to a customer, so I don't want to imply that it should in any way be undermined, but you have to listen to multiple sources. Okay, so that facilitates, once again, a learning culture, a culture of all of us learning from what the data says, what our own customers are telling us, and what the market's telling us. The second thing is you have close alignment with product management. You have to be aligned with product management because they, of course, have some of these things on their roadmap. And you need to make sure that you're aligning with what's truly feasible, right? Do they take self-checkout as an example and deprioritize it for mobility or vice versa? And so that alignment as a product marketer is absolutely key. Once again, it worked because it wasn't just one salesperson, one product marketer, one customer. It was truly a cross-section of data from many sources. We even went, I didn't even mention that, right? The slide was only so big. We also talked to, of course, our analyst community. And we said to them, so what are you guys seeing out there? You know, they're talking to customers every day. They're obviously a huge, huge voice of the market. And then lastly, product marketing listened, right? As an organization, we were prepared to pivot with objectivity, right? Even if we wanted self-checkout or mobile or whatever it wasn't about what the product marketer wanted or the salesperson wanted. It was about what the market needed and the customers needed. And so that's one example of why this really worked and how it's so important to make sure that you have that alignment and you have that data that speaks to what's really required. So the second example I want to highlight here was a question around user experience, right? How do you take this notion of delivering better user experience to your customers? And so in this case, it was more about the delivery. It wasn't so much about the message, but a bit of both. But it was more about how do we deliver our user experience, our refined user experience differently and better. And so we had a situation where what we were essentially doing, the way we're rolling it out, was questioned. Okay, and so we had support saying, you know, the customers want to opt out of this, and you know, they think user experience is absolutely key, a better user experience, but the customers want to opt out of this functionality because they're used to the old ways. Change is hard. And we're on the front line as a support, and you know, candidly, we're tired of hearing of it. So can you just let them opt out? We're done, right? Sales is saying, because you cannot do an entire user experience and a whole new shelf for all your products overnight, we're losing deals because we're going in and what the customer wants we don't yet have, and da 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 da. And so that was their thing, right? You got to move faster. And you're not moving fast enough, so this is a problem, right? The analysts we went to said, you know, do more user testing, right? Highlight the customers. Change is hard, right? Change is hard. Nobody likes change. And sales and support who are on the front line are not always going to be your biggest advocate of change in front of the customer, but you have to deliver, as does everybody. You have to consistently invest in delivering new and modern customer experiences, right? You can't, it's not something you can back away from. So customers will always hate the change, but work with them more closely on user testing as you move forward. And the customers, of course, said, you know what, we like it, but you know what, we need a couple of years to get this done. You know, we got a lot of other things on our plate, and you know, can you take more time and give us more time before you roll this out? And so we sat in the middle of all these requests, right? And said, well, what do we do? How do we listen to all those voices? How do we bring those voices in for consideration? And how do we then drive an outcome that brings us ahead, but also leverages the fact that that also understands the fact that change is hard, and that we have to bring our customers along on that journey with us, that we can't abandon that journey. And so the outcome that we reached in this scenario was we went back to our engineering organization and we said, you know what, this is what we need your help on, our engineering and our design organization, our UI UX team. And we said, we want you to do more testing before you release. You've been doing testing now, but we'd like to have more of it. And in the vein of that testing, we want to make sure that there are more proof points for how the customers can benefit, to give them a better sense of comfort in this experience. The second thing is we want some modification related to what you roll out and when you roll it out, right? Development was in this mentality of, you know, execution equals success, right? If we just roll stuff out, we check the box and that's great, right? We got X number of screens rolled out. And so as product marketers, we had to come back and go, no, it's confusing to our customers. You have to make sure that you adjust the way in which you roll it out and when you do it, okay? We changed our messaging and our launch communications. That was a big thing that we also worked towards to make it more successful. We looked at how we're talking to the customers about it. And then the result of that was happier customers, right? They still got the functionality, they still got the new user experience, but they understood the value better because of the way it was rolled out, because it was not rolled out it didn't seem to be rolled out screen by screen anymore. It was now rolled out according to things like their persona, according to things like a business process that they were trying to accomplish, etc. So once again, a real world example of how you take the voices out there and you bring them together in a cohesive way as product marketing to deliver a successful outcome. Okay. So pivoting to doing something like this is not easy, right? It's almost like you got to put more work in at the beginning to get the outcome at the end. And so it requires that you really look closely at, as I said, is the market needs, the trends, and you get the input from many, many different places. That has to drive the priorities and roadmaps and the unified messaging, which then leads to this organizational alignment I talked about, which is this industry plan, which then goes to the campaigns, which then goes to your various constituents. So this is absolutely key. Without this alignment and unity, it breaks down. It breaks down because you have a situation, for example, where you might create a campaign without being aligned to the prioritization. You have a plan that maybe you're coming out with a sub-vertical industry plan that has nothing to do with the market needs. And this is an absolutely important process, and it takes a while. It's that notion of, you've really got to invest at the beginning to benefit at the end. And it requires this alignment. And every organization and every product marketer needs to think about, do we have this alignment today? Because if you don't, your voice, that buyer at the end, this all important, gray box here, they're going to be confused because every aspect of your organization is probably saying something different, is giving different messages, and thus expressing different voices to market. And then, never to be undermined, this all important feedback loop. And as I talked about, this all important data of metrics. Okay. And how your organization does this, every organization differs a bit, but this pivoting is absolutely important to drive that alignment. And it starts with, what are we trying to accomplish? What are those strategic priorities? What are those roadmaps that exist today? Do they have to change? Are they matching the market need? Are they then going to drive the unified messaging that product marketing delivers, then into the industry plan, and thus into the campaigns, or as I said, those wrappers that go to market? So moving right along here, couple ways to make sure that these right voices resonate. Just to highlight, I gave some examples of how it can be done differently. I talked about the ways in which the important aspects of your organization that need to be on the same page. And these are really ultimately the ways in which you need to make sure those voices resonate to get that clear voice to market at all times. Number one is, as I talked about, align on that same, what I call North Star plan. Okay. If sales and who knows, the customer, everybody's on a different plan, right? Everybody in your organization has a different plan that doesn't address what the market needs and what the customers want, you're going to be in trouble. Alignment is absolutely vital. Going to the slide previously. You listen closely to sales, but recognize that they're one of many inputs. They're an important input, very, very important input, but they are not the only input, nor is, for that matter, an analyst or anybody else, right? You have to be objective as a product marketer and have that holistic approach and looking at multiple inputs and then putting forth a thoughtful and solid recommendation to drive both product direction and strategy. Let data be your guide. And once again, data has to be obtained from many places, right? It can be it can be, Salesforce or whatever tool you use for your CRM system. But your data also has to come from your website downloads, your content syndication efforts. It has to come from many, many different places to help guide your decisions and guide your marketing messaging. And lastly, I talked about this culture of continuous improvement. Adjust quickly. Admit what you don't know or what didn't work. The examples I gave previously, we have to come back and say, gee, there were some things in here that we had to adjust, right? Going back to kind of the user experience example, we could have said, you know what, we're doing it right. This is great. We're already on the way, and we're just going to keep right on going because we know we have to, roll out better user experience. It's just something every software company does. Well, yes, but can you do it differently? Can you adjust in different ways? Can you drive a different outcome by understanding and admitting what might be better and what's not working? And then serve as a strategic advisor to the rest of the organization to make that happen. So in closing, I want to say, as you go and you really look to ensure that you have that single voice to market as a product marketer, make sure that you are, I guess I should say, be humble about your approach. Make sure that you continuously adjust it, have the right data, and continue to drive organizational alignment. This is not an easy task, but if you do this, you will make sure that you're able to pivot in a crowd of ever-changing voices effectively. So thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to hearing and working with you in the future to learn how you've been able to do this successfully.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jennifer. There's a couple of questions in the chat and the Q&A section, which we'd love to hear you answer.
Okay, let me read them here. Should I start at the top? Let's see. No, it looks like we've got just a couple at the bottom here. Okay. Have you found the lines of communication? Let me read it out loud. How have you found the lines of communication during the pandemic? Has it been easier to get consistent messaging or more difficult? I don't think it's been easier, I'll tell you that. Things are changing so rapidly that it's required that pretty much every day we check in with the messaging that we have and we pivot accordingly. One thing that my team has been doing a lot of is making sure that we're getting more access to external information in a more timely manner. Previously, I think it was more of a point in time that we would do it, and now it's almost daily. We are daily checking in with our competitive organization. My team is consistently out there with sales, tweaking all the time the messages because it's changing so quickly. And so a good example is we redid our entire website, right? Like many companies, and we came up with brand new offers according to the pandemic to make sure that we were addressing what was needed. So, for example, we took our e-commerce solution, talked a little bit about the importance of mobility, and we offered a fixed scope aspect of it, ECC Lite, so to speak, Enterprise, e-commerce Connect, e-commerce Connect Lite. And what we did is we offered that as a way to get to market faster. And that came directly from the pivot that we had to do and the customer feedback related to this pandemic. Okay. How do you ensure good data collection as well as reliable data handling? Couple of ways. Data, as I said, has to come from many sources. So we don't just rely on internal sources. We do a lot of working with vendors, intelligence organizations who provide objective views to our win-loss data, because as you well know, ask a salesperson about win-loss data, you're going to get a very different opinion than if you ask the customer or you ask an external vendor who's interviewed the customer. And so the way in which we do it, I would say, is once again, a more holistic view of the data collection. And we also make sure that we are constantly working towards updating our marketing operations and our systems. That's a huge undertaking in our organization, like most organizations, because data is something that is often so dispersed, right? And so we work very closely on an organizational alignment to say, you know, you gave me this data, but I'm going to go somewhere else and verify it, right? So once again, never really taking at face value, always trying to get a second opinion, and ideally getting opinions from external sources as well. Thank you for the questions. Those are great.
There's another question for you, Jennifer, in the Q&A section. Steve asked, what would you consider to be a typical timeline to go from concept to in-market to revenue generating? Or put another way, how do you go about setting business expectations about how long it will take to see results?
Yeah, so see results. We do it a couple ways. So we set up our campaigns, as I talked about, and our go-to-market messages according to vertical, sub-vertical, and for lack of better words, business challenges that we're seeing out there. Now, once we don't do it, it's not set in stone though. We have to change that, and I just talked about that. So sometimes, so we have a campaign plan, which generally is, you know, we'll launch campaigns, we'll launch the messages within, you know, 2 to 3 months with all in, right? All content developed, but the reality is we then also are able to pivot quickly on what we call programs or initiatives by leveraging the content of those. So we don't reinvent the wheel every time, right? The challenges that a distributor is dealing with today, such as financial visibility, those or financial, you know, really visibility or insight, they are still a challenge. They were a challenge a year ago. They were a challenge 2 years ago. However, now they're focused more on cash flow, right? But they still need that financial visibility. They just need it related to their cash flow because of COVID. So we take those core messages that a lot of those companies are struggling with, and we tweak them to meet the needs of today. But we don't reinvent the wheel every time. And so it's a bit of a short-term and a long-term view based on the market need, which allows us to pivot our messages quickly. Think of it as copy blocks that we, you know, mix and match according to what that imminent need is. Okay. Any other questions? Thank you again.
Great. I think that's all the questions. Thank you once again for a great presentation and taking the time to answer those questions as well. Thank you to everyone for tuning in and asking such great questions. And Jennifer, thanks. I hope to speak to you soon. And
yes, thank you, everybody.
Tomorrow as well.